Hey everybody, I am back again with not one but two battle reports. This week was the tournament for the end of the league that I've been playing in. If you follow some of the battle reports on my blog, we had 10 players. The tournament was the 4 people with the best record, which I was one of, and we just did a simple 2-round tournament at the local store. Random missions, random terrain, and random pairings as well, except for after the first round. It was myself, a Skaven player, a mixed order player, and a Chaos Dwarves player, all of whom I know pretty well and played throughout the league. The first round, I was going up against the Skaven player. I was actually his only loss in the league. He had the second best record behind myself. I took my normal destruction list, as you can see here. Grot Shaman, Savage Orc Big Boss with 3 Huskguards on Thunder Tusk, Kunruk Battalion with 3 units of Savage Orcs for Battle Line, and as many Arrow Boys as I can fit in there. I also have a Bone Grins War Clan. That's just to get a 3rd artifact. The 3rd artifact is for a couple specific matchups, mostly against Skyfires and long strikes, sometimes Sylvaneth, things like that. So there's Talisman of Protection on all 3 Huskguards. All 3 Huskguards also have Blood Ravens. The guaranteed mortal wound is really powerful. This list is just a ton of shooting. Not too much close combat, but because of the amount of shots it puts out, doesn't really need to be very good in close combat. Also a very powerful scenario presence, and it comes in at 1980 as well. I've been testing the Grot Shaman versus a War Doc. The War Doc can be part of the battalion when you take the Bone Grins War Clan, which gives you one less deployment, but the Grot Shaman has a significantly better spell in Curse of the Bad Moon, and is also a little bit more reliable on some of those casting rolls with his Mushroom. So this time around I decided to take the Moon Clan version, and it was a list I've been playing a lot and I have a lot of experience with. Feel very comfortable into pretty much anything. So we'll see what Chaos brought. This is a full Skaven list. I actually played the pilot of this list before with an all Nurgle army, Nurgle demons, and after that game he said next time we played he would take his Skaven against me, and true to his word he did. He has a Verminlord Deceiver with the Crown of Conquest, Arch Warlock, Warlock Engineer, Deathmaster Snitch, Warp Grinder Weapon Team, 3 10-man units of Clan Rats just to hold objectives and fill up battle line, 2 20-man units of 20-man unit of Gutter Runners, and 80 Plague Monks, one of which the champion is his general and has Lord of War. For deployment, he put the Plague Monk general unit with the Warp Grinder team, and then everything else was deployed as normal except for the Gutter Runners, of course. This list has a lot of teleportation, a lot of movement tricks, so really good at getting up into my face, putting the pressure on me instead of letting me have the kind of ranged game with the screens that I usually play. So it's actually a really good counter to me. From a Skaven perspective, I think this is actually one of the cooler Skaven lists I've seen, either online or played against. It has decent theme, lots of fightiness with the 2 Plague Monk units who are really good on the charge, and especially good if they can avoid being battle shocked off the table, which the Crown of Conquest definitely helps with, and then being able to put a Warlock Engineer or an Arch Warlock or even Deathmaster Snitch kind of where you want them on the board makes it really easy to pick off heroes or pick off war machines, things like that. So really good all-around army. This is going to go into deployment. We were playing Border War, so the little gold coins are the objectives. The terrain, the white dice is a damned piece. The rock formations are inspiring. That middle hill is also damned. The white dice on the upper left is mystical, and then the purple dice all the way at the far side of the table is arcane. I started deploying as I won the roll for tableside, decided to take the side with the damned piece of terrain, more centrally placed, but not with the mystical. I don't really like having mystical terrain with this army because although reroll to wounds is extremely powerful with the arrow boys, if you roll the 1 on them, you lose an entire turn of your army pretty much, and then it also doesn't benefit the Huskguards any because they don't roll to wound with hardly anything. So I decided to just take the safe side with the damn terrain. I also knew that with the two big units of plague monks, they were going to be trying to come in and get into my army, so I thought I could use the rock formations as kind of a natural barrier to at least funnel them down and maybe prevent some attacks. So I started out dropping my Thunder Tusk just in the middle of the board because he can redeploy pretty easily and his gun has a good range, so those are always good things to start with. This is just the same picture of the same thing. I don't know why I took two. My opponent started with the clan rats, just dropping the kind of unimportant units that he's going to grab objectives with. Counter with another Thunder Tusk, and he puts down another unit of rats, as you can see there on the left. I do another Thunder Tusk. The reason I go with my Thunder Tusks first is, like I said, they can redeploy pretty easily, and I also want the option to be able to either wholly drop my battalion if I need to, or I can start partially dropping it and then finish up the rest to, guarantee the first turn. Didn't really matter in this game because I just had less deployments than my opponent, but it is good to have in the back pocket for some games. So here I have my shaman down. You can see the last unit of clan rats in the middle there. There's a warlock engineer in the back there. I place my big boss behind the shaman. There is the arch warlock. I believe he was turned around in that photo, but oh well. This is my first unit of orcs. I'm trying to build a bunker during deployment, so I was going to have one unit of orcs on either flank and one unit of orcs in the middle, with my arrow boys kind of forming the second line, and then my heroes inside of that. I know that he's going to try to snipe the big boss with shooting or with spells or whatever he can do, so I have to make sure he can't just place the Deceiver or Deathmaster Snitch or somebody like that wherever he likes, and then, shoot me, charge me, do all that kind of stuff, because the big boss is actually, he hits very hard, but he's not very survivable. So the whole goal is to keep him alive as long as possible, and also keep the gutter runners out of my arrow boys, because I'm sure they would love to charge into them as well. So this is my other unit of orcs on the other flank. Excuse them being a little oily looking. I actually finished dipping them the night before. Didn't get a chance to matte varnish them yet because I still need basing. This is the big unit of plague monks that is deploying on the board. The other one is going to be with the warp grinder team, as I mentioned. This is my front unit of orcs. And then this is pretty much the finished deployment. You can see my arrow boy is kind of pushed up the front there. Vermin Lord Deceiver is hanging out in the back. Deathmaster Snitch actually decided to just be deployed on the table instead of, hitching a ride with somebody. And then I decided to give my opponent the first turn. Reason behind this was, obviously, if I get the double turn, I can probably shoot most of his army off of the table. Having him go first does have the risk of the Warp Grinder team coming up with the Gutter Runners, with a Skitter Leaped hero into me, which is a little messy. If that happens, I'll probably lose all of my Orc units, maybe a little bit more than that, but with the Counter Punch, I should be able to clean up almost all of it, because the Plague Monks that come from the Warp Grinder team are not going to be able to get Inspiring Presence, and the the Gutter Runners are not going to be able to get Inspiring Presence either, and all of those units have extremely poor Bravery, so it should be pretty easy to split up the Arrow Boys shots and Battle Shock them all off the table. That was kind of my plan in the worst case scenario. If the Warp Grinder team doesn't come up, hey, even better. So here is Chaos turn 1. First thing that happens is a Warlock Engineer gets Skitter Leaped right in front of my lines, tries to put a Warp Lightning into my big boss, goes off on a 12, so there's nothing I can do about unbinding it. That's one of the reasons I put the Grot Shaman there, is so I could at least get a shot at unbinding something if he came in, but wasn't to be. Luckily, it only manages to do 1 wound, as you can see there, so not much I could do to prevent that possible assassination. I had the unbind roll, which is my only defense, and then just hoping that he doesn't roll the 6, because Savage Orc heroes have 6 wounds generally. So that went my way, and luckily I didn't end up losing a lot of my offense on turn 1. The Arch Warlock moves up, as does some of the other units. Oh yeah, here are the gutter runners coming in on the right flank and the left flank. I've placed my models in such a way that it's not possible for him to get within range for the slings on my arrow boys or anything but my orcs, or the thunder tusks if he wants to, but I'm okay with that. Those are my targets I'm okay with some damage going into, because the orcs are not really very important in this game, and the thunder tusks can heal themselves and are very unlikely to go down to slings, and then he would need a long charge into them, and they're -1 to hit and all that stuff, so I wasn't too worried about losing them. Plague monks just run up the center, so pretty expected for what they're going to do. The clan rats are moving to get the objectives. The deceiver runs over to the far side, and Snitch moves up just a little bit. He was very wary of losing his heroes to my Thunder Tusk this game, because the Verminlord Deceiver's -2 to hit does not work against Thunder Tusk, because they don't actually roll to hit, they just roll a flat 2+, and then Snitch is auto-missed at 6 inches, I believe, but if I can get closer than that, then I can just pop him, and he didn't want that to happen. This is the Arch Warlock moving up the flank, probably going to be his secondary skitter leap target, because he has a pretty decent gun and a pretty decent spell, and is not too bad in a fight either. The Warp Grinder team actually did not end up coming up, which is a big break for me. Chaos only managed to roll a 2 for that, and then they come in on a 3, so that's a pretty decent portion of the Skaven army that I don't have to deal with. So that was very helpful for me. This is the Warlock Engineer charging into my front line of boys after failing to take out the big boss. And this is the Gutter Runners getting into my orcs on the side here. And this is the other unit of Gutter Runners failing to get into the other orcs. They both needed a 9 for the charge. The slings both went into the orc units on the flanks. Did a fair bit of wounds, but they don't have the best profile, even though they do put out a lot of dice. So my units didn't get obliterated or anything, but I did take a couple casualties for battle shock purposes. This is the Gutter Runners after the combat. They kill all the orcs to a man. They're actually pretty good in combat. I've not played against Gutter Runners before, so I did look up their profile on the Age of Sigmar app, but they my poor 10-man orc unit was definitely no match for them, but a worthy sacrifice to keep that unit out of my more important damage dealers. And then this is my orc unit on the side post battle shock. I think they lost one other guy there. And then, so now it's over to my turn. In my turn, I start off with putting Inspiring Presence and Bellowing Tyrant up on the Arrow Boys, and then putting the reroll 1s to wound ability on each of the Thunder Tusks, because there was no wounds for them to heal up with their other prayer. I then do my Cunning Ruck shooting. I took a damned roll as well. I think I took 3 wounds for that, but I really wanted to hit on 3s. So normally hit on 5s, +1 for damned and +1 for Bellowing Tyrant, because the goal this turn is to kill all the Gutter Runners, or at least kill enough of them to make them run. The Plague Monks got Inspiring Presence, forgot to mention that, so I have to kill them to a man, and then hopefully kill off some of the Clan Rats as well, because they did take the 2 middle objectives and their friendly objective on the first turn to score 5 points, so I need to make sure that I bounce back in the scenario game quickly, or it's possible that I'll just be outscored and lose on scenario, which I definitely don't want. So this is some of the Arrow Boys into the Gutter Runners. They killed 6, as you can see in the back there. There's some shots dumped into the Engineer, as well as an Arcane Bolt from my Grot Shaman, which the Engineer failed to dispel, so that takes care of him. And then I believe I killed some of the Gutter Runners on the left, but I don't think I got a picture of that. So we go to Rampage and Destroyer movements, and then, well, as well as my just regular movement phase. This is my Blue Thunder Tusk moving up towards the left objective. He's hoping to be able to charge into that Clan Rat unit, wipe them out, and take that objective. It is weight of numbers in Border War, but even though he's only 1 model, through Battle Shock and charges and maybe some stray shooting, I'm hoping I can get rid of just 10 Clan Rats, because they're not very tough, only having 6+ saves, 5+ if it's against damage 1 weapon. This is me surging forward a little bit. Want to make sure I can get as many guys in range of the Plague Monks as I can. You can see the green Thunder Tusk on the right there, going for that objective, and the red one in the middle is kind of hedging his bets, making sure he has multiple targets to shoot into, and that he can charge into the Plague Monks should I need some help finishing them off there. The orcs on the that were in the front pivot to the left, just to kind of go for the left objective should I need backup there, because he's a little Skaven's a little stronger on the left than they are on the right, or at least hopefully they won't be as strong on the right after I do some shooting. And then I also wanted to sort of soft bubble wrap my arrow boys against the plague monks coming up. Going to be very difficult while I'm actually unpacking my army, but just trying to do the best I can with that. This is the green unit of orcs on the right. They, again, hedging their bets a little bit. Going to charge into the gutter runners if I can't kill enough of them to make them all run from battle shock, but they're also heading towards that right objective, again, just to help me back up there with numbers, because it's hard to hold an objective with just one model. This is the clan rats after the shooting phase. I believe I took out 6 of them with a frost wreathed blast from the green thunder tusk, and I think I put the bird into either the gutter runners, or I believe it was the gutter runners. Just tried to finish some more of them off. This is where the plague monks once were. I dumped, I believe, all of my arrow boys shots into them just to make sure they died, because when arrow boys are 4s and 4s, that's just like 31 wounds on the math, because the champion hits on 3s. With damned, it's a little bit better, but there were 40 of them, and again, they were immune to battle shock, so I do want to kill them to a man, or at least only leave a couple over for a charge. But I did end up killing them with some nice rolls, and they don't have armor saves, which, that always helps. This is the clan rat unit on the left. I actually missed my frost wreath blast into them, so I only killed one with a bird. That guy's bird has broken off his arm, unfortunately, so there's going to be a little more over there for me to contend with, which is bad, because again, I need to kill all of them in order to get the objective, because I have to have more models within 6 inches of it than my opponent. So if I leave him with 1, I do not have more, and since he already has control of it, he would retain control of it. This is the charge on the Thunder Tusk into those clan rats, and this is the charge on the Green Thunder Tusk into what remains of the other clan rats on the right. Kill all the clan rats on the right pretty easily. The rider is not very good in combat, but the mount is pretty good. 4 attacks, wounding on 2s, rerolling 1s because of my prayer, turning to D3 wounds, so no 5+ save for the clan rats, and then his Ren gets rid of their normal armor saves, so I was just able to blow them down. There were only a couple left anyways, and they probably would have broken from battle shock, but I wanted the extra inches to get onto the objective. Over here, again, managed to clean up a lot of those clan rats, and then what was left of them ran, I believe. Again, just trying to make the most that I can out of the poor bravery score of Skaven units. They really rely on inspiring presence, and if they don't have it, it's really easy to break them off of the board. That was the next turn. So yeah, and then I also managed to put enough shooting into the gutter runners units, which I guess I didn't get a picture of, my apologies, to break both of them guaranteed from battle shock, so I didn't have to end up charging into them, which I was glad for, because they're pretty good in combat, and if I had to charge both my orc units into them, one would have gotten to swing before I got to go with the second orc unit, and might have put some more meaningful casualties into me. I didn't really want to be losing models for no reason, but luckily I was just able to battle shock those units off the board. 20-man blocks of gutter runners, probably a bit much. They don't really get any bonuses for being in 20-man blocks, so I think units of 5 would have been better. I don't think they count as anything like artillery or monsters or battle line or anything like that. It is a lot of deployments, obviously, but it would make them a little bit more resilient to battle shock. This is the Skaven turn 2. I lost the initiative roll, so no double turn for me. Wasn't too bummed out about that, because I killed most of the stuff that was on the table and in range of me, so he has Deathmaster Snitch left, the Arch Warlock, the Deceiver, 1 unit of Clan Rats holding his objective, and that is it. Yeah, that was all he had left. So I wasn't really... I could have moved up and probably shot some of those things, but it would have been kind of a wasted double turn. And then I did score 5 points on my turn as well, so the score is now 5-5. So on the Skaven turn, another Skitter Leap goes out, putting the Arch Warlock in to finish off what the Engineer started. The Arch Warlock gets his spell off, the name escapes me, on a 10, but my Grot Shaman dispels on an 11, which was pretty awesome. It was nice to see him be a better wizard than the Arch Warlock, so to speak. So foiled there, which was good because that would put some more mortal wounds onto my big boss and do a little bit more incidental damage to my other units, which I definitely did not want. Vermin Lord Deceiver and Deathmaster Snitch move up in order to try and get a combo charge off on the Thunder Tusk. He obviously doesn't want me having that objective anymore, so if he can kill off that and take the objective back, that's a double whammy there. Again, the Warp Grinder team did not show up, rolled another 2, I believe, or maybe a 1. So now it's getting a little hairy as far as not having that 40-man unit on the field. They're not too expensive, but there's a lot of offense in that unit that he really wants. Even if they need a 9-inch charge, which is a bit far, but you got to have the units on the table to at least try. This is the Arch Warlock charging the big boss after shooting him, so his shooting attack did 3 mortal wounds. I believe it's a once per game d6 mortal wounds. So he gets in there to try to finish him off personally because Skaven has to be able to kill the big boss off, otherwise I'm just going to have way too much shooting, and there's no way he can really do anything to me at that point. Snitch gets into the Thunder Tusk, but the Deceiver does not make his charge. I believe he needed like a 10 or something, so it was quite a long one. I take a few wounds from the Weeping Blades, but I actually made, I think, like something ridiculous, like 3 out of 4 5+ armor saves or something like that. So he wasn't going to go down, but with the reroll to hit and reroll to wound against heroes that Deathmaster Snitch has, he could have been very, very wounded, and that would make it difficult to pick him back up for the remainder of the game, with even with my healing. This is just another picture of that combat. The Arch Warlock manages to kill the big boss off, so the way that we did the back and forth was So yeah, my opponent started with Deathmaster Snitch, didn't do very much. I went over to the big boss. Big boss bounced off of the Arch Warlock because he actually has a pretty good armor save, and I didn't roll very well. And then the Arch Warlock went and killed him with the spear because the spear does 3 damage. So only 1 poke was needed to get through, and that's all that was required. So he went down. So now I'm no more Cunning Ruck shenanigans for me. And then the Thunder Tusk goes and manages to actually put 2 wounds in a Deathmaster Snitch, almost effectively tying that combat in terms of wounds done, which was pretty hilarious because Deathmaster Snitch is supposed to be like a really good hero assassin, but didn't end up rolling super well. This is my next turn. I had no battle shocks to make in my turn, and because I still controlled 2 of the objectives, the score went to 6-5 in Skaven's favor because he only scored his friendly objective. This is me moving a Congo line onto the far right objective. The reason I went in a Congo line is to just try to take up some real estate for the Plague Monks, and also to kind of keep them away in case the Plague Monks came up, because at this point I'm going to be able to pull ahead on scenario, and if the Plague Monks come up, they have to choose between making a scenario play or trying to make a charge and do damage, so I don't want to give him both. I either want to make sure I control the scenario and he gets into my units, or he goes for scenario and then I just shoot him to death, so it's kind of between a rock and a hard place at this point for the Skaven. This is my other units just moving up generally. You can see the green and the red Thunder Tusk are eyeing my opponent's objective. He moved his clan rats back a little bit in the previous turn just to try to keep them alive. This is another shot of my side of the table. The Arch Warlock was actually in combat with the Grot Shaman and the Arrow Boys, but I decided not to pile in with them just because I wanted to keep moving forward, not move a little bit backwards, and they're really unlikely to do that much damage to him, if any, so the few inches moving back wasn't worth the maybe like 1 or maybe 2 wounds that I'd do to him, so I just decided to forego that. Blue Thunder Tusk heals himself back up a little bit, so he's only got 1 wound on him, which is good because that means his gun goes back to doing straight 6 mortal wounds, which is always fantastic. That was actually the next turn. Yeah, so this turn I think I forgot to take some pictures, but I managed to wipe out the clan rats with my Thunder Tusks. I managed to kill the Arch Warlock by putting all of my arrow boys into him because I didn't really have any other targets. They were in combat, so I couldn't move out of 3 inches of the Arch Warlock without counting retreating and then not shooting. I would have liked to shoot the Deceiver, but I mean, I'll settle for killing the Arch Warlock in my back lines. The Frost Wreath Blast from the blue Thunder Tusk went into the Verminlord Deceiver, putting in 6 wounds on him. Fortunately, couldn't get the other 2 Thunder Tusks in range of him. I was hoping to snipe him that turn. And then they also couldn't get in range to shoot Deathmaster Snitch either, so he managed to live as well. So didn't take out quite as much as I wanted to that turn. The Verminlord Deceiver is quite wounded, and Deathmaster Snitch is still wounded from the combat, but now those are the only 2 models left on the table, so it's pretty much free reign for me to get the objectives, and I actually do control all 4 objectives at the end of this turn to score 9 points, so it's 14-6 in my favor. This is the Skaven turn 3. The Deceiver moves down the hill to get within 3 inches for the charge. Once again, the Warp Grinder team does not show up. So the first 3 games, they did not bother to come out and play, much to my opponent's frustration. So the Verminlord Deceiver just cast Mystic Shield on himself. He has no more Skitter Leap targets worth really doing. He could have Skitter Leaped himself into my Arrow Boys, which might have been a decent option, but I think at this point he was just trying to take out the wounded Thunder Tusk and kind of see what he could get. But you know, because kind of in a big hole at this point. After the combat, I take 9 wounds, so I'm 2 wounds left, as you can see by the dial there. And then I actually managed to kill Deathmaster Snitch, I believe, in this combat. Yeah, so it was just the Verminlord Deceiver left, I think. Again, rolled pretty good for my hits and my wounds, and that D3 damage, doing some work there. So that was the end. I think that was the end of his turn. He scores no points because the only thing left on the table is the Verminlord Deceiver, and I have control of the left objective, so 1 model is not enough to take it from me. This is my turn 3, so bottom of 3. I managed to heal up my Thunder Tusk a little bit, as you can see there. Verminlord Deceiver gets taken out by plenty of mortal wound shooting. So at this point, I have tabled my opponent. He still has a Warp Grinder team and Plague Monks waiting in reserve somewhere, so I'm basically just spreading out a little bit to try and make sure I have all the objectives and make it hard for the Plague Monks to do anything if they should come back up. I also score another 9 points, so that puts me at 23-5, pretty much out of range for my opponent this turn, so now we're kind of just playing for pride. I lose the initiative roll again, so this is the top of 4. Plague Monks finally decide to show up. He puts them in quite a long line, as you can see here, hoping for some combo charges onto my monsters and fun things like that. The Warp Grinder team ends up making its 9-inch charge, but the Plague Monks fail, so they show up on the board only to do nothing and stand around. The Warp Grinder team, I believe, did a wound to me, and I think I did 1 wound back to it, so it avoided getting squashed. But on my next turn, I start moving everything on up, kill the Warp Grinder team, as you can see there, he's gone. Kill just a truckload of the Plague Monks who did not have Inspiring Presence, and then managed to charge my Red Thunder Tusk into them just to have a little bit of fun at the end of the game, let him do some fighting. The Blue Thunder Tusk also tried to make it in, but failed his roll. He needed like a decently high charge range. End up taking 5 wounds from the Plague Monks. Pretty good, even though I charged them so they don't get some of their bonuses. Managed to kill, I think, just a couple more, mostly flubbed the dice rolls there. But they managed to all run away due to battle shock because of lack of Inspiring Presence and taking something like 20 plus casualties on the turn, so they're just automatically all broke and ran. So that was the game. Major victory to me, quite decisive. The game really came down to my opponent not getting the Warp Grinder team in with the Plague Monks when he needed them to. Not guaranteed they would have done anything, as we saw at the end there. They do need a 9-inch charge when they come up, so they're not. It's not like you could place them within 3 inches or anything cool like that. We talked about the game afterwards. probably some things that could have been hammered out a little bit better. With the Skaven army, like I said, the gutter runners being in like 5-man units would be a lot better than a big 20-man block because it makes you split your shooting, and there's really not much downside to doing it. Like they don't get any bonus that I recall from being in a big unit. There's no buffs that's really going to go on them, so they don't lose out on that. It would be a ton of deployments because that's like what 8 deployments right there, but you're already playing Skaven, so you probably already have too many deployments to ever get to decide to go first or second. And with quite a bit of that army being able to hold back and either teleport in or walk off the board edge or something like that, you don't really have to fear going first or second. You can kind of do your game plan no matter what you're going to do. I think putting the Plague Monks with the Warp Grinder team is also not a very good idea. Having the general in there is definitely not a good idea because then he can't use his Lord of War or his Inspiring Presence when he comes up because they come up in the movement phase, not the hero phase. So that was a bit of an oversight there. But I think Warp Grinder teams are a lot better with shooting units. So typically people will take um, not giant rat ogres or something like that, or like a not flamethrower teams because they only have an 8-inch range. Yeah, there's only a couple of good things that are really good with them outside of the Clan Skyer battalion, and then just rolling less than a 3 for the first 3 turns of the game was pretty brutal and allowed me to mop up the rest of the army with relatively little trouble. Good plan to try to assassinate my big boss. If that had gone off for only the price of an engineer, really would have tilted the game in his favor. I would have had a really hard time making scenario plays at that point because I would have had to use my Thunder Tusk to kind of help mop up the Gutter Runners and the Plague Monks, so he would have almost certainly got to hold those side 2 objectives. Don't think it would have made much of a difference in the end because I did have time to catch up, and it's just so easy to break those Plague Monk units. I mean, you only have to put a couple wounds into them, and then the rest of them will just run. So they are good objective holders the same way Marauders are or something like that, but they don't stick around if your opponent decides to put some gunfire or some stray spells or something like that into them. But yeah, overall good game plan by the Skaven. Tried to hit me from multiple angles, tried to take out my hero, tried to do some sneaky things by getting some guns into me, but I was really able to counter the army with my deployment. Really happy with how I deployed this game. The bunker formation worked out brilliantly. I put Thunder Tusk forward so that they still got to move and do their thing in the game. And then sacrifice my 100-point orc units, which I don't really care too much about because the plan for the objectives was just to smash my opponent's face in, and I'll still have plenty of arrow boys to hold quite a few objectives if I need to. They can be Congo lined, all the way across the board if I want to hold pretty much all 4 objectives at the same time. So my deployment worked out really well there. I didn't lose anything important and absorbed his alpha, and then managed to kill quite a few points back. I believe on that first turn I killed almost half his army because the gutter runners are about 500 points for 40, and then I killed 2 units of clan rats, and I killed an engineer, and I killed 40 plague monks. So yeah, it was just a brutal turnaround for me. What my army does for offense is matched up really well against his list. Volume of attacks from the arrow boys, just decimating the plague monks with no armor save, the gutter runners with a really bad armor save, the clan rats with a bad armor save, and then I had the mortal wounds to go into whatever I needed to threaten the heroes or pick off anything else laying around. There's never really a bad time to have mortal wounds on guns. So yep, that's my list was probably quite a bit stronger than my opponent's. It's very honed. I'm very experienced with it. I've played almost all my games with some variant of that list. And played quite a few 2,000-point games. And then, like I said, I went undefeated in the league as well. So taking it quite seriously. That put me into winner's side of round 2. The first round was the Chaos Dwarf player, buddy of mine named Daniel, versus Matthew, who's playing a mixed order list, mostly Seraphon with some Kurnoth Hunters and a Celestial Hurricanum, I'm sorry. He managed to get the win over the Chaos Dwarves. They played Gift of the Heavens and Chaos Dwarves are not the most mobile armies, so the Comets came down in unfortunate places, and the Seraphon managed to run away with it with a major victory in that one. So round 2 will be me versus Mixed Order, winner take all, and I will have that coming up in another video. Thank you very much for watching.